Joining me now is David Pine, our national security expert. He is a regular guest here, folks, as you know, pretty much becoming every night because things are moving so fast on a global scale. He brings us an update, related to what was supposed to be a 2-hour phone call between President Trump and the Russian President Vladimir Putin, I think turned into 3 hours. He joins us now. David, thanks for being with us again tonight.
Hey, Brandon, great to be with you.
We had you on radio today at 1 o'clock Central on our 74 terrestrial stations, and here we are back tonight. So much is happening. We know that call was taking place. Now it went from 2 hours to 3 hours. Before we get to some kind of shocking news coming out of China tonight as well as something a map I want to show related to an EMP attack on the country. Tell us, what are you hearing came out of that call with President Trump and Putin?
Well, I think it was a very positive call. There was nothing really sweeping or earth-shattering that came out of it. But probably one of the best things that came out of it is it appears that President Trump has come around to Russia's position that this war can only be resolved in bilateral talks, excluding Ukraine and the EU, one-on-one between the Trump administration and the Putin government in Russia. And I've been saying for months, if not years, that's really the only way that we can resolve the conflict, because Zelensky and the EU leaders are adamantly opposed to peace. This whole idea of a 30-day ceasefire that Zelensky was, convinced to sign off on. It was actually a British plan, which Ukraine Zelensky accepted. To try to make Russia look bad, but he has zero desire or intention of following through with that, even if Russia had accepted it. But the other big thing is that came out of it is that Russia agreed to stop attacking Ukraine's energy and infrastructure in exchange for Ukraine doing the same thing. And I would say that that's probably a mutually beneficial part of the agreement. I think Zelensky should accept that. I don't think he necessarily will, but it would benefit Ukraine, obviously, to have Russia stop attacking its grid and energy system, because Ukraine has really suffered. The winter's ending, but Ukrainians have really suffered at not having blackouts and only a few hours of power, in some cases a day. A lot of what was discussed, it was really related to kind of a comprehensive peace agreement. Russia's desire to have a comprehensive and final peace that would resolve the Ukrainian conflict on a permanent basis. Which is something, again, that neither Ukraine or the EU has really wanted to support, and to address the origins of the conflict, why to prevent it breaking out in the future. Yeah.
Let's talk about let's move on to China. You've posted on your Twitter feed, Chinese President Xi Jinping has arrested the Chinese equivalent to the U.S. Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. Wow. We talked a little bit about this with Gordon Chang last week, but this is getting up high into the leadership. Now, what is going on?
Well, I think you can kind of relate this to, Stalin's purge back in, I think 1937 and 38, when he was getting ready for war. He was expecting war to break out between Germany and the Western powers, and eventually between the European powers and Russia itself. Then, of course, the Soviet Union. To me, I think to Western observers, it doesn't really make sense to replace your military leadership right before a major global conflict with a enemy superpower. But what I have heard is that some of the folks that are being replaced reportedly are a little skittish when it comes to risking a full-scale war with the United States. So that could explain it. Obviously, he wants to have loyalists. He wants to have Chinese generals that are willing to press the nuclear button if he makes that decision to engage in super EMP and massive cyber attacks on the U.S. if that's what Xi Jinping decides needs to happen. And so I think that's probably the main rationale for these replacements. So I don't think this demonstrates the U.S. shouldn't celebrate any of these replacements because, if anything, the old military and Ministry of Defense leaders are being replaced with folks that are even more hardline against the U.S.
Okay, so this tells you that he is preparing to go to war, or at least preparing to take Taiwan, or what?
Well, they're going way back. There were reports that there was a U.S. Army major that was kind of observing. I think he was an military observer to Chinese PLA exercises in Africa, in East Africa, near their main naval base in Djibouti. And as he was watching the amphibious exercises, he asked one of the PLA soldiers or officers, are you guys getting ready to invade Taiwan? And he replied, no, we're getting ready to invade the U.S. So there's a lot of contingencies. I will say that nothing is set in stone at this point. I think the initial plan would be to move on Taiwan. Every indication is that it would be Taiwan, but they're building a tremendous amphibious capability, which we haven't seen since the U.S. invasion or the Allied invasion of Normandy in 1944. Their amphibious capabilities now exceed the U.S., I think, by a wide margin. So that amphibious capability can be used for kind of regional amphibious invasions. It could be used for the Philippines, for Taiwan, for Japan, even Australia. It could also be used for kind of a springboard to invade Hawaii or even the Western United States itself.
I want to go to another one of your ex-posts as well, David. The Trump administration strikes on the Houthis are serving to weaken the U.S. military's ability to deter Chinese aggression against Taiwan and U.S. treaty allies in the Western Pacific. But the president's threats to go to war with a nuclear-armed Iran are the most troubling, seeming to violate his desire to be remembered as a peacemaker who ended and avoided wars as would escalate to an unwinnable nuclear war, World War III. The U.S. has already sunk an Iranian spy ship, putting us on the road to war with Iran. As Vice President Vance has stated, U.S. interests often differ with Israel's, and a U.S. war with Iran would be very much against U.S. national security. Trump gave Netanyahu the green light to break the excellent ceasefire agreement. He pressured them to accept with Hamas potentially signing the remaining hostages' death warrants. President Trump should end this U.S. proxy war with Iran and pressure Israel to end its military strikes against Gaza, which have killed 400 Palestinians during the past 24 hours, adding to the previous tally of 40,000 men, women, and children. Okay, so the concern is that, look, we only have so much, as we've said the other night, stock on the shelves. We've spent a ton in Ukraine under Biden. Now we're doing more with the Houthis. And again, as we went to last night, this is, I'm concerned, a global strategy to distract and weaken America before China moves on Taiwan. In other words, are they playing President Trump? Are they playing him and enticing him into this to shoot off more, to do more, and then weaken us in our, because some of these things, we need a couple years to boost back up the inventory of our munitions, right?
Actually, in some cases, such as 155 millimeter heavy artillery ammunition, it could take up to a decade to replenish our stocks that we've given away to Ukraine. But every weapon that we use on these peripheral threats like the Houthis, which are a nuisance to international shipping, but don't pose any major threat to the United States, weakens our ability to deter Chinese aggression. And they're looking at, they see a unilaterally disarmed United States military, and they see us bogged down in two proxy wars, one in Ukraine and the Middle East. And Xi Jinping is undoubtedly thinking, this is it. This is what I've been waiting for. They've been waiting for, they've been primed and ready to invade Taiwan, I believe, since 2020. That's the direction that Xi Jinping gave the PLA, is that they need to be ready to invade to go to war, potentially with the U.S. by 2020. It's now 5 years later. I've always said his timeline was 2025, his drop dead date. I've now extended that. It could be 2027. I might have been a couple years off. but I think it's more likely to happen this year, just because I think the Ukraine war is winding down, and they really want to make their move before Russia and the U.S. kind of forge this new strategic partnership for peace that could potentially, neutralize their alliance with Russia, meaning that while they would remain allies on paper, Russia would have no incentive to make any aggressive moves against the U.S. if they're, partnering together to forge a new era of U.S.-Russian cooperation, not seen since perhaps World War II.
So you would not be shocked to see China move against Taiwan this year, 2025?
I think there's probably a 25 to 30% chance they'll move on Taiwan next month, but probably, I would say well over 50% that they'll do it by October or November.
Wow. Okay. So we got that. Let's say that gets going. Then you add what's going on in the Middle East. Then you add in going after Iran. If we were to strike Iran's nuclear facilities with Israel's help, I'm sure they'd be involved, joint exercise. What would be Iran's first response? Would their first response to be to send what? Do they have hypersonic, supersonic missiles? And if so, would they send them to U.S. military bases in the Middle East? And if so, which ones? How many dead American soldiers are we looking at within minutes if this scenario plays out?
Well, I don't think it would be immediate. Iran has much more rational leaders than we've been led to believe that they do. I believe that, as Peter Pry did, and as former CIA director James Woolsey stated in an article in 2016, that Iran has had nuclear weapons for probably at least a decade, perhaps more. Their ICBM program dates back to 2005. There's no country in the world that's ever had an ICBM program that wasn't already a nuclear power. According to Peter Pry, they were 3 months away from developing nuclear weapons in 2003. I listened to Kurt Weldon give an interview in 2006 in which he confirmed that the CIA was saying that Iran would have nukes by 2010, according to their assessment. Even back then, we hear the same thing we hear today, that this is almost 20 years ago, 15 to 20 years ago, that Iran was on the verge of developing nuclear weapons. I mean, does any person in their right mind believe that Iran, the Islamic Republic of Iran, would not develop nuclear weapons when they were mere months away? It's really incredulous. The same people that claim that Iran doesn't have nukes yet, say that they're an Islamist terrorist regime, and if they had them, they nuke Israel. Iran's they're much more rational than that. But that said, if we were to strike their nuclear, that's really a red line for them. If we were to strike their nuclear facilities directly with the U.S. and Israel, I think they would reveal the existence of their nuclear missile arsenal at that time, and they would essentially say, one more time, and we'll have a nuclear response. And they might even reveal the existence of their super EMP satellites, which are really their trump card, because all they have to do is press a button and they could take out all of the entire U.S. Critical infrastructure without warning.
And that's that EMP blast radius. Now, is that with a satellite, or is that with something shot off of a cargo ship in the Gulf of America?
So, most missiles that are shot off cargo ships are medium-range ballistic missiles or hypersonic missiles. So this map would be either an ICBM delivery or it would be a super EMP satellite. So as you can see from this map, there is kind of an optimum altitude that blankets all the U.S. with EMP effects, kind of what I call an EMP pancake, that kind of round circle. That could take out our critical infrastructure within that circle, and the optimum altitude is about 285 miles. So I've been aware of that for some time. It was 2 or 3 years ago that I saw that Iran put two additional satellites into orbit at 285 miles. And so that's a real red flag. Folks, EMP experts like me know what that means. And it means that Iran likely does have a nuclear capability, and they have, super EMP weapons are part of their military doctrine. They consider it a form of cyber warfare. So they don't believe it crosses the nuclear threshold, and they would not expect the U.S. to respond with a nuclear retaliatory strike in response to a super EMP attack that severely degrades our NC3 capability to put in question whether we could launch a nuclear response at all.
And so these are two satellites that orbit and come over the Earth, just like North Korea's two satellites?
They're very similar to North Korea's satellites. I haven't confirmed if they're in polar orbit as the North Korean satellites are. The North Koreans, of course, orbit their satellites, so they come over the southern U.S. To the north in order to evade our early warning systems because we have very minimal early warning detection in terms of ground-based radars and whatnot from the south.
So Iran has two of these, though. Two of these satellites.
Yeah, at one point they had three, but they first launched a satellite in 2020. I think then they launched a couple others in either 2022 or 23, and then I think one or two since. But they permanently had at least two in orbit at this altitude, which was, again, is the optimal altitude to strike the U.S. with a super EMP attack.
Do both of them cross over the U.S. regularly?
Yes, they do.
Wow. And go back to Iran real quick. Should we hit their nuclear facilities, or do you see them hitting us with ballistic missiles? How would they strike our military bases, perhaps in the Middle East? And are they using supersonic or hypersonic missiles?
Well, I think that the high value targets within the Middle East are aircraft carriers or carrier strike groups. I mean, certainly they could strike our U.S. military bases in the region. We have troops, of course, in Iraq, which is essentially an Iranian proxy, as well as Syria, which used to be an Iranian proxy and now no longer is, but still is well within striking distance of their proxies in Iraq. So they could definitely target and kill hundreds of our U.S. troops. And if you'll excuse me, I need to plug in my computer before it dies.
Plug it in real quick. And folks, while we're doing that, remind you again, we are brought to you by you. We do these long format interviews all the time, folks, and we just keep cranking out the information. But I got to have your support to keep all this going. Worldviewfoundation.com. That's one way you can do it. Worldviewfoundation.com. You'll also find our mailing address there if you prefer to support us through the mail. So again, please, folks, we have chosen this format, which is we don't take a lot of commercial breaks. We could do like the networks do and do about every 10 minutes a commercial break for 4 or 5 minutes, but we try not to do that, folks, because if you'll support us, we're committed to this format. But it's vital we have your support. Worldviewfoundation.com, worldviewfoundation.com. You'll also find our mailing address there. Please also consider going to worldviewtube.com/sponsors, worldviewtube.com/sponsors. Check out all of our different sponsors there, folks, from Worldview Talk, which gets you your satellite phone. So should the grid go down, you can have a satellite phone. You can have a bivvy where you can actually text using your phone, but not using the cell tower. Use your phone to send it to that bivvy in your hand. That bivvy sends it to the satellite down to your family member that has one. Solar generators. I have one of their solar generators, okay? If the grid goes down, excuse me. If the grid goes down, you're going to want to have some communication. Certainly, the ability to use something to power some of your devices, and your coffee pot, your recharge your satellite phone, whatever else you've got, flashlights that are rechargeable, all this stuff. You're going to want to have a solar generator. You're going to check it out right there at worldviewtalk.com or call 1-866-738-3224. I would also direct you real quick to worldviewstore.com. I don't even know if we have that on here, Logan. Worldviewstore.com. I guess we better put that on here. Worldviewstore.com. That's where you can get all your emergency freeze-dried food, 6 months, 3 month, a year, 2 year, breakfast, fruits and vegetables, gluten-free, all of it. Worldviewstore.com. All right, let's go back to David Pine. David, you got your computer plugged in. I'll let you pick up where you left off.
Yeah, as I was saying, Iran does have a tremendous stockpile of ballistic and cruise missiles and increasingly large stockpile of hypersonic missiles. I think they may have more hypersonic missiles than the U.S., certainly in the Mach 4 range and above, which is just below hypersonic of the kind that we've seen the Houthis used against carrier strike groups in the Red Sea. But I think that the easiest targets for them would be to typically we have a carrier strike group that's just outside the Persian Gulf. So that would be an easy striking range for them directly from Iran. Those would probably be their top targets if they decided to pursue more of a conventional attack. But they might also have conventional EMPs that they could use to take out almost entire carrier strike groups with a few one or more conventional EMPs that wouldn't cross the nuclear threshold. That's technology that China has. We know Russia has that as well. So there's a lot of different options they have. And again, I can't overemphasize this enough. If Trump decides to attack Iran directly, Russia and China are military allies of Iran, and so they could potentially enter the fray, and most likely they would do so through, obviously in the case of China, they would support Iran indirectly by invading Taiwan to draw U.S. military forces away from the Middle Eastern Iranian theater. Whereas and Russia could also potentially join in with major ramped up cyber attacks against the U.S. and perhaps even NATO.
All right, dangerous times, right, David?
Very dangerous. Yep, I saw Leo Holman just posted an article saying that he predicts the chance of World War III under Trump are at 50%, but he says that if it had been Kamala Harris, it would have been 100%. And sadly, I largely agree with his assessment.
Really sad. dpine.substack.com, dpine.substack.com. Let me ask you about on the way out. If we were to go to World War III, would they have to re-implement the draft, David?
No, what a lot of people don't realize about World War III is, I always say that we'll know we're in World War III when the power goes off and never comes on again. So this would be a war that would be very quick. It would be a war that lasted, weeks at most, but more likely days, at least in the initial phase, because I predict that on day one of intense combat operations with China, certainly they would take out the U.S. critical infrastructure with a massive cyber attack and counter space attack. We know that according to Senate Armed Services Committee hearings, that many of the senators said during hearings in 2023 that all U.S. satellites would be down within 2 hours of the onset of the conflict. So that would, those two things would have a massive impact. And if we were unable to defeat the China's cyber attack, that could have almost an EMP type effect in our population, where tens of millions, perhaps even a couple hundred millions of Americans perish over a year. So that's a huge threat.
So there won't be time for a draft, is what you're saying?
No, there's not going to be time for a draft. Basically, the war would essentially be won by the enemy within the first several days of the conflict, I think, or again, within the first 2 or 3 weeks at most, if we were to fight, the U.S. or Russia or China. We could start mobilizing, but we wouldn't even realize we had the need to mobilize a large number of reservists until it was too late. And once that happens, the government is is going to be unable to communicate and to essentially govern. And so, there would be a very limited mobilization capability from what it is today.
And of course, from the time you draft civilians to the time you can actually put them on the battlefield is what, a year?
Well, yeah. I mean, if you're Ukraine, you put them in the you take them off the streets and put them on the front line 3 days later to get shot. It's almost murder, essentially, what they're doing. But so desperate. The more desperate a country is, the more willing they are to put green troops and untrained troops on the front line. But again, our training capabilities would be greatly degraded in a cyber or EMP attack scenario, or even a limited nuclear strike scenario. So typically, it takes at least a few months, and I would say more closer to 6 months to fully train, an infantryman, or let alone someone in a more specialized MOS.
All right. So one of the things obviously coming out of this conversation is, I think you and I agree, there's not much I can do other than maybe make my voice known, you, our audience, to our elected officials. Slow down. We don't want to go to war with Iran. We don't want to do anything to escalate this. We don't want to be seen as weak, but we also don't want to be played. We don't want China playing us and using Iran to do it and having us shoot off more munitions and more rockets and things that we need to save. But aside from that, we need to be preparing. Individual families need to prepare. There will be no government. If we go to World War III and this scenario plays out like you're talking, there will be no government. You will be on your own. And if you think the people of North Carolina had it rough, or the people of Eastern Tennessee, you're going to be on your own. That's all I can tell you. And you better be prepared. Correct, David?
Absolutely right. I think local governments would likely survive. City and county governments, particularly in rural areas, there might even be instances of some state governments, retaining some governing capability. Again, more in rural states than highly populated states. But the central government would be gone. I mean, there would be remnants unable to communicate with each other. So the country would be ungovernable, and we could collapse into essentially a patchwork of principalities and regions that resembles pre-imperial Germany, back when it was a bunch of city-states. I hesitate to even say that, but perhaps I think more along the lines of the former Yugoslavia, breaking up into multiple pieces.
But even if you have states that survive, now you've got a huge manufacturing, distribution, food, farmers. You have a huge crisis. I mean, the humanitarian crisis and the number of millions of Americans that will die due to disease, starvation, and societal unrest is going to be overwhelming.
It would be a genocide on the level of the Jews being exterminated. The enemy wouldn't even have to be here and to do the killing. We would be killing each other off for the last scraps of food and potable water, unfortunately.
Which again goes back to the map that was put out, in 2014, showing a decrease in American population by 68.5% by the end of 2025.
Was that kind of like a New World Order type?
No, that was like a DARPA. That was like a DARPA map and prediction. They predicted like 77% for Europe, 68.5% for America. By the end of 2025, decrease in population. And we were trying to figure out, are they talking pandemic, plague, World War III? What are they talking? It's got a lot of people following that map and that work. It was put out by really the intelligence and military industrial complex.
Yeah, that's really disturbing and troubling that they're thinking that far ahead. But yeah, it could be any number of those things that you mentioned, or all of them combined at once. It could be, China has the capability to unleash deadly biological weapons in our country, either with the troops they have, in the U.S. itself, or with other means of terrorist strikes, or from container ships and things of that nature. They also could potentially use the Club K container missiles that I know you reported on when they first came out, to take out D.C. NORAD, Stratcom, the Pentagon, White House. So there's all kinds of scenarios in there. It all goes back to what I said during your radio show, is that if the U.S. were not so interconnected in terms of our alliance system with countries half a world away, no one would care about bothering us. Back in 2003, I kind of wrote a position paper when I was president of a research organization based in D.C., advocating the U.S. withdraw 75% of its military forces from Europe and East Asia. And the purpose of that was to, if we decreased our threat profile to Russia and China, they'd be more likely to go out, to attack each other than they would to view us as a threat. And I think that still holds water. Our alliances don't make us stronger. They put us at far greater risk. And I think the Ukraine war has shown that better than anything else to date.
Well, that report I'm referring to is the Deagle, D-E-A-G-E-L, the Deagle report. It's all over the place. You could go look it up. It's like 68.5% of the U.S. population gone by the end of 2025, and now we're looking at this. Now we're staring this down. So there you go. Well, it's important to be informed and stay ahead of what's going on, and to try to be prepared, not panic, but prepare. And that's what we're doing. But again, we should all be saying a prayer for Donald Trump tonight to make wise decisions and not be baited into something that's meant to weaken us for the ultimate battle with China.
Yeah, we absolutely should. His foreign policy with regards to Russia is has so much potential to increase our security. It would really be a shame to see him squander it with an attack in Iran that could cause all of our peace talks to collapse like a house of cards, and give China, an opportunity to attack Taiwan in the belief that we couldn't respond effectively. So he definitely needs our prayers.
Indeed. dpine.substack.com, dpine.substack.com, our national security expert, David Pine. David, as always, thank you for being with us.
Thanks, Brad, and you're a true patriot.
You too, my friend. dpine, D-P-Y-N, dpyne.substack.com. There it is on the screen. And he's also the president of the EMP Task Force, emptaskforce.us.